we're talking about the human form in the face. Always the face because of my mask collection. And we're going back into the repetitiveness of patterns, but it's rounded rather than angular. Not as angular as it was before for a while. I'm going back to my rounds. And it's connecting rounds and different curves, making the connection. The other important thing is the patterns follow the curves rather than being against the angular. So what we're looking at is this kind of roundness, this kind of softer but still very strong. And it's very important that they're strong. They always have to be strong and definite. I still keep the patterns in terms of using these the small lines to make these grays and light grays and darker grays, but not all over, but just in certain spots. It's also important that it's floating more in the middle of the page and not all over the page. It's important also that I kept the original line and a thin line that like the stitching in the molas that we talked about before. The mola from the San Blas Islands off the coast of Panama. They're Panamanian indigenous people. Let's look at the one before this. Simpler, but very direct. This big overall shape. And then the patterns coming out of it. So it's important to understand the overall shape is deciding what the look of the face is. The look of the face is decided not just by the outside, but by the inside. When we understand that the outside and the inside are interchangeable, then we have a different kind of artwork happening. What happens outside this big shape here is more dark. The darks are very important to this outside shape. And they reflect the darks in the eyes. Understanding that is to understand the play of the darks and the overall pattern of the work. Nothing in these things are an end in themselves, but I still use a lot of the similar techniques and the use of lines. The use of the lines is a very important part of the piece, not just talking about the stitching on the sunblast, but also that it redefines the space. Redefining the space in the face is a very important part of these drawings. They really reflect where I'm at. I'm still not able to work with color. And that's something that is, since my last stroke, or semi-stroke as they call it, I haven't been able to use color still. But when it happens, it happens. these three faces take on each one of their own meaning, their own shapes, their own ideas, their own patterns, then that's important that each one is different. Very important. We want to make this white, very clearly white inside. But here, it's a mixture of things. And here, it's black. So what are we talking about when we're talking about these three? We're talking about the differences, not in just the color of people, but the differences in shapes. Each shape is different. Beyond that, we get into we're thinking complicated textures, but keeping the simple textures around the white face, but much more complicated around the middle face, and the black face is simple like the white face. This and this are more related than that. Again, more this rounded feeling, but in this case, I keep the rounds, not the accent on the color, but on the patterns around the main face. Let's look at these patterns here. Smaller as they go back is a very important part of the perspective around these masks. And most of them have that kind of perspective. They're also that they're connected but not the same. And to be connected and not the same is maybe a contradiction, but it's there. This is a very simplistic one, keeping the outside simple and the inside simple. But the outside has this darker patterns and the inside has it all white pattern with the darks. And the darks over here are an important part with the light. So it's light and dark, light and the dark, they're dark. This one is one of the more successful ones, I think. The patterns in the black face and the echoing inside the maps, the mind of the face. Don't know. Back up here, we go to the grays and the different patterns in the grays, and then the white face. So we get this more this way and this way, more related to this way. This one is from the earlier ones of this biomorphic shape. Biomorphic being more human. Less angular. And this is primarily with the black face, several black faces inside this biomorphic shape. This one is the starting, where I'm starting to use these shapes in a simple, first like a simple drawing. And the emphasis is on the drawing and this, and the two faces. But the two faces are only the story. They're not the whole feeling like almost, it's an organic shape. And I'm starting more, when I'm doing this, with more organic shapes. The idea of the shape breaking away from the main shape is a theme that I use many times in my work over the years. But here we have a white face, a black face, patterns, and this thin kind of semi-biomorphic shape. Again, the outside shape is deciding the inside, more of the inside shape. But not an end in itself, as we talked about before. It's this, as we start making these inside shapes have a life of their own. It's important that each shape has a life of its own. No shape is an end in itself, but is a shape unto itself. Here's this one from about a week and a half ago. The outside and the inside play against each other. The outside and the inside playing against each other means that the shapes inside are private unto themselves. And I say private in the sense that they have their own meaning and deliberation and tell that kind of a story. We don't know what the story is because it's in the shape's language. And this is where I start breaking away from the more geometric, more linear, and start making it more organic. Organic, that can be a cliche, but in this case, it tells the story of the breakaway from the shapes. Again, nothing in these are an end of themselves, but a beginning of something else. And this tells you where I was starting to break away from these more angular shapes. And I always add some kind of biomorphic, perhaps more related to nature. But it's the start of something else that's going on in here. So as we're looking at these, we can see the progression from this to something like this. This very busy, but a lot of the angles getting lost more and more. So this is back to the village, the shapes that have been coming. And this is back to this one that we looked at before. But this perspective is very important. Always in these, there's a perspective that offers a chance to go back behind the front shape. Let's go back and look at this very simple one, which later becomes part of a bigger one, more complicated one. What's complicated could be simple, what's simple could be complicated. But either way, it has to be what it is. It's, in the end, a black and white drawing with ink. Tells the story. The ink tells the story. Back to this. Back to where we started. So it's many of the patterns that we've used before, but in different ways and different places. In the end, they all tell the story of black and white and those textured grays. In the end, the story holds up or it falls apart, but I have no idea what the story is, so it doesn't matter. It's the patterns of things that tell the story. So, in the end, it's a blank sheet of paper, and we start all over again with the blank sheet, with no story, or maybe the blank sheet and paper can be the story, but I haven't figured that out yet. So there it ends with this blank, starting a new page. In the end, it's about starting another piece and not trying to be fancy or mechanical or anything, but just be who I am and what's happening in me. And what's happening in me is what's happening in me, nobody else. And what's happening in you is happening in you, nobody else. And every line and everything I put down is part of me, but it's also part of the story. In the end, it's about a blank sheet of paper getting ink on it. And that's the story.